exemplifies John Wooden's life that was one that he wrote himself. It goes like this. Be more concerned about your character than your reputation, because your character is what you really are, while your reputation is merely what others think of you. John Wooden had a reputation for being the most successful coach in NCAA men's basketball history, but his character showed that he did not boast of his wins, but he built people up instead. John Robert Wooden was born October 14, 1910, on a small farm near Centerton, Indiana. He grew up with 3 brothers, a mother, and a father. He also had 2 sisters, but they both died during their infancy. When John was about 14 years old, his family had some financial struggles, so they had to sell their family farm. They decided to move to Martinsville, Indiana. This is where John Wooden went to high school. While he was attending high school, John met his future wife, Nellie. He and Nellie had 2 kids, Jim and Nan. And then in 2010, John Wooden died of natural causes at the age of 99. But his long life created many moments for highlights and a great legacy for him to leave behind. Throughout his life, many people influenced John Wooden. One of those people was his dad, Joshua Wooden. His dad taught him the importance of an education and taught him to love learning. Of the things that John Wooden most admired from his dad was his faith, his honesty, and his fairness. John was a little boy. He went into town with one of his friends. He charged a soda to his parents' grocery account, and since the Woodens didn't have very much extra money in those times, John felt very guilty about this and told his dad right away what he had done. His dad, instead of punishing him, just had a talk with him about how disappointed he was in him and how that affected their family. This resonated with John Wooden greatly, and so he carried it over to how he dealt with players in his life. Another person who influenced John Wooden in his life was Glenn Curtis, his high school coach. Glenn Curtis was a great coach, but John Wooden did not like his attitude. He felt that he had favorites, and therefore John Wooden did not want to have favorites when he grew older. Everyone knew who Glenn Curtis's favorites were, and John Wooden was not one of them. So when John got into a fight with one of Curtis's favorites, Glenn Curtis took the other boy's side, so John Wooden left the team for 2 whole weeks. After those 2 weeks, Glenn convinced him to come back, and that's when he decided that he would never not let a player come back onto his team again. Ward Piggy Lambert, John Wooden's coach at Purdue University, taught Wooden the value of earning your education. John Wooden worked many odd jobs to keep his tuition up, and he even worked extra hard to be on the Dean's List because the Dean's List earned him a part scholarship every year. He also taught him the fundamentals of basketball. This is where John Wooden learned to institute a fast break and the pressing defense. And then when the Celtics offered him a job, John Wooden went to Piggy Lambert for advice. He asked Piggy what he should do. And Piggy Lambert asked him, well, you got an education, are you going to use it? Then John Wooden turned down the Celtics offer and decided to work at a high school. He came up with the motto, don't let making a living prevent you from making a life. John Wooden influenced many people and places in his career. The first 2 were the first 2 high schools he coached at, one in Kentucky and one in South Bend. At both of those schools, he was an athletic director, coach, and teacher. He taught English, which is what his major was in at Purdue University. At Kentucky University, he was the coach of football, tennis, baseball, and basketball. He didn't feel like he was qualified as a football coach, though, so he gave the coaching job up to the former coach. After working at those 2 high schools for 11 years, World War II occurred. John Wooden enlisted right away. He was utilized as a PE teacher to prepare the soldiers for war. But he had appendicitis very soon after, and this prevented him from going overseas. The plane that he was supposed to be on had a kamikaze fly into it, and so he would have been killed, but he wasn't, and this is what led to his great appreciation for life. He was quoted once saying, "I'm not afraid of death." After World War II ended, John Wooden had a hard time getting his teaching position back at South Bend High School, so he was looking for any coaching job that was available. He found one at Indiana State University. Here he led the team to winning their conference twice. The first time they won, they were invited to the NAIA tournament. But in this year, African American players were not allowed to participate. And since John Wooden had one African American player on his team, the team decided as a mutual decision not to participate in the tournament. The next year, his team won conference again and went back and got another offer to play in the NAIA tournament. This time, the NAIA changed their rules, and this African American player was allowed to play. He influenced the NAIA tournament into not discriminating against races. His next job offer was for UCLA or University of Minnesota. He originally wanted to coach at University of Minnesota more than he wanted to coach UCLA because UCLA had bad facilities and not very much talent. But he told both of the student bodies that he would reply to their offer in a specific amount of time. And since the University of Minnesota could not get back to him with an official offer, John Wooden had to accept the UCLA coaching job. But then a few hours later, University of Minnesota called back and offered him the position. But then John Wooden, being the honest and man with integrity, couldn't back out on his UCLA job because he had already officially accepted it. So now he moved his family to Los Angeles from the Midwest to start his coaching job. John Wooden had the privilege of coaching many great players at UCLA, including Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Walton, Walt Hazzard, and Marquise Johnson. He also coached Swen Nader, who produced 120 poems about the wisdom that John Wooden imparted on him. All these players were very successful in the NBA, and because John Wooden influenced them so much, they imparted that wisdom onto the people of America who watched them play. John Wooden also supported women's athletics. He thought that women's basketball showed another side of basketball, not just of the brutality. It showed the finesse of the game. And so women's basketball supporters used his comments as a shield against criticisms against the sport to grow. This is John Wooden's greatest achievement, the Pyramid of Success. He worked on it for 14 years to perfect it. It outlines the steps for individuals, teams, or whole businesses to succeed. It is used in the government, education, and business fields in their leadership development programs. This is the legacy that John Wooden left behind, as it is used for the basis of all leadership training programs. John Wooden was quoted once saying, "If there's anything you could point out where I was different, it was the fact that I never mentioned winning. I am just a common man who is true to his beliefs."